every Aries you know is living a lie. Not the kind of lie that makes them terrible people, but the exhausting type of deception that slowly eats away at their soul while everyone around them remains completely oblivious. Behind every confident smile, every bold decision, and every moment of apparent fearlessness, there exists a complex web of psychological patterns that would shock even their closest friends and family members. The truth is, Aries have mastered the art of emotional camouflage better than any other zodiac sign. While the world sees fire, passion, and unwavering determination, what's really happening beneath the surface tells a completely different story. They've spent years perfecting a persona so convincing that most people never question whether that aggressive confidence might actually be covering something much more vulnerable and human. Think about the Aries people in your life for a moment. Notice how they always seem to have everything under control, how they charge headfirst into challenges that would paralyze others, how they appear almost superhuman in their ability to bounce back from setbacks. But have you ever wondered what happens when they're alone? What thoughts run through their minds during those quiet moments when the performance finally stops and they're forced to confront themselves without an audience? The reality is that Aries carry emotional burdens that would surprise you. They've learned to weaponize their natural intensity not just to achieve goals, but to create distance from feelings and situations that threaten their carefully constructed image. Every explosive reaction, every dramatic exit, every moment of seeming spontaneity often serves a much deeper psychological purpose that even they don't fully understand. What makes this even more fascinating is how society has played into their deception. We've collectively agreed to see Aries as these unstoppable forces of nature, these natural-born leaders who fear nothing and need no one. We celebrate their independence, admire their courage, and rarely question whether someone who seems so strong might actually be running from something. This social reinforcement has created a prison where Aries feel trapped, playing a role they created to protect themselves, but can never escape. The most heartbreaking part isn't that they're hiding these truths from the world. It's that they're often hiding them from themselves. Years of maintaining this emotional armor has created blind spots so large that many Aries genuinely believe their own performance. They've convinced themselves that the mask is reality, that the persona is their true self, and that acknowledging anything deeper would somehow diminish their power. But here's what nobody talks about. This constant performance is absolutely exhausting. Living in perpetual fight or flight mode, always being on, never allowing themselves to simply exist without having to prove something to someone, creates a level of internal pressure that eventually demands release. The question isn't whether these hidden truths will surface, but rather how they'll manifest when they finally do. Welcome to Secret of the Zodiac, where we expose the psychological patterns that shape how each sign moves through the world. Today we're diving into territory most Aries would never want explored publicly, but understanding these hidden dynamics will revolutionize how you see every ram in your life. Make sure to subscribe and hit that like button, because what we're about to uncover will challenge everything you thought you knew about this seemingly straightforward fire sign. The first layers of Aries deception begin with two interconnected fears that drive almost every major decision they make, starting with their absolute terror of appearing weak or vulnerable and their compulsive need to abandon anything that might expose their limitations. The first reason, they secretly fear being seen as weak or vulnerable. The moment an Aries senses even the slightest possibility that someone might witness their emotional pain, their entire nervous system goes into full defensive mode. This isn't just about pride or stubbornness. It's a primal survival mechanism that runs so deep most Aries have forgotten it was ever a conscious choice. From childhood, they learned that showing weakness invited attack, disappointment, or worst of all, being overlooked entirely. So they developed an emotional fortress so sophisticated that even trained psychologists struggle to penetrate it. Watch what happens when an Aries gets hurt in a relationship. Instead of expressing their pain directly, they'll become hyper-aggressive about completely unrelated issues. They'll pick fights about dirty dishes when they're really devastated about feeling unloved. They'll explode about work stress when they're actually terrified their partner is losing interest. This emotional displacement isn't manipulation, it's panic. Their subconscious mind has calculated that anger is safer than vulnerability, that being seen as difficult is preferable to being seen as damaged. The most tragic part of this pattern is how it perpetuates itself. When Aries deflect their real emotions through aggression, people around them respond to the anger instead of the underlying pain. Friends and family learn to handle the outbursts while remaining completely unaware of the genuine hurt that caused them. This reinforces the Aries' belief that their true emotions are too dangerous to share, creating a cycle where they become increasingly isolated even when surrounded by people who care about them. Consider how an Aries handles failure. While other signs might seek comfort, advice, or simply someone to listen, Aries immediately begin constructing elaborate justifications for why the failure wasn't really failure at all. They'll blame external circumstances, other people's incompetence, or timing issues, anything except acknowledge that they genuinely tried their best and it wasn't enough. This isn't arrogance, it's terror. Admitting they gave their all and still failed would mean accepting that they're human, limited, and sometimes powerless, which feels like emotional death to their warrior psyche. The workplace becomes a particularly cruel battlefield for this dynamic. Aries often excel in competitive environments precisely because their fear of appearing weak drives them to superhuman efforts. But this same fear prevents them from asking for help when they need it, admitting when they're overwhelmed, or seeking mentorship that could accelerate their growth. They'd rather struggle alone and potentially fail than risk someone seeing them as less than completely capable. The second reason, they abandon projects the moment they lose interest. This abandonment pattern reveals itself most clearly in their professional lives, romantic relationships, and personal goals. The Aries who starts 15 different business ventures, begins countless creative projects, or cycles through career paths isn't scattered or unfocused. They are running from a specific type of psychological discomfort that surfaces when initial excitement transforms into mundane reality. During the honeymoon phase of any project, Aries feel invincible. The novelty provides endless dopamine hits, the challenge feels conquerable, and their natural enthusiasm convinces everyone around them that this time will be different. But here's what nobody realizes. Aries aren't actually motivated by the end result. They're addicted to the feeling of potential, the intoxicating sensation of standing at the beginning of something that could change everything. The moment that feeling fades, usually when they encounter their first real obstacle, or when the work becomes routine, something inside them dies. It's not that they can't push through difficult periods. Aries have incredible endurance when they're emotionally engaged. The problem is that pushing through the mundane middle portions of any endeavor requires acknowledging that success comes from persistence rather than just talent and passion. For a sign that has built their entire identity around being naturally gifted leaders, this realization feels like a betrayal of everything they believe about themselves. Their abandonment strategy is usually masterful in its subtlety. They don't make dramatic announcements or burn bridges with explosive exits. Instead, they gradually reduce their involvement, become mysteriously busy with other priorities, or develop sudden, passionate interests that require all their attention. This allows them to preserve their self-image as someone who chooses to move on, rather than someone who gave up or failed. The most insidious aspect of this pattern is how it affects their relationships with other people involved in these abandoned projects. Business partners learn they can't rely on Aries for long-term commitment. Creative collaborators discover that initial enthusiasm doesn't translate into sustained effort. Romantic partners realize that the same passion that swept them off their feet will eventually turn towards someone or something else when the relationship requires work rather than just excitement. But here's what makes this particularly heartbreaking. Many Aries genuinely don't understand why they keep repeating this pattern. They experience each abandonment as a rational decision based on changing priorities or new opportunities, never recognizing the underlying psychological driver. They might notice they have trouble finishing things, but they attribute it to being naturally entrepreneurial or having diverse interests. never connecting it to their deep-seated fear of being seen struggling with something difficult. This creates a devastating cycle where each abandonment reinforces their belief that they're not capable of sustained success, which increases their anxiety about the next project, making them even more likely to flee when challenges arise. Over time, they develop a reputation for being unreliable or flaky, which contradicts their self-image as strong leaders, creating even more internal pressures to prove themselves through the next exciting beginning. The financial and emotional costs of this pattern compound over years. Aries might have started dozens of projects that could have been successful with persistence, built relationships that could have deepened with commitment, or developed skills that could have flourished with practice. Instead, they're left with a string of almosts and what-ifs, wondering why they can never seem to achieve the lasting success that their talent suggests should be inevitable. What's perhaps most tragic is how this pattern isolates them from the very support systems that could help them break it. Friends and family eventually learn not to get too invested in Aries' latest plans because experience has taught them that enthusiasm will likely fade. This protective distance from others reinforces the Aries' belief that they must handle everything alone, making it even more likely they'll abandon ship when facing difficulties rather than reach out for help or encouragement during the inevitable rough patches that every worthwhile endeavor includes. The third reason, they manipulate situations to always be the hero. This psychological pattern represents perhaps the most sophisticated and unconscious manipulation tactic in the entire zodiac, precisely because most Aries have no idea they're doing it. Unlike calculate manipulators who consciously scheme to control outcomes, Aries have developed such an automatic hero creation system that it operates entirely below their conscious awareness. They genuinely believe they're just naturally gifted problem solvers who happen to find themselves in situations requiring their intervention, never recognizing their role in orchestrating these very scenarios. The process begins with their hyper-vigilant scanning for potential problems or areas of dissatisfaction in their environment. While others might notice tension and hope it resolves itself, Aries unconsciously catalog every micro-expression of frustration, every hint of inefficiency, every suggestion that something could be improved. Their warrior instincts, originally designed for physical survival, have evolved into an emotional radar system, constantly seeking opportunities to demonstrate their value and indispensability. Once they've identified a potential crisis zone, the real artistry begins. Rather than addressing issues directly when they're small and manageable, Aries employ what psychologists might recognize as strategic procrastination. They'll withhold crucial information that could prevent problems, delay sharing insights that might help others succeed independently, or remain mysteriously unavailable during moments when their guidance could steer situations toward smooth resolution. This isn't conscious sabotage, it's unconscious cultivation of circumstances that will eventually require dramatic intervention. Consider how this plays out in workplace dynamics. An Aries manager might notice that a project timeline seems unrealistic, but instead of immediately addressing the scheduling issues, they'll allow the pressure to build. They'll watch team members struggle with impossible deadlines, observe mounting stress and confusion, perhaps even add subtle complications by requesting additional features or changes that make success even more unlikely. Then at the precise moment when failure seems inevitable and panic reaches its peak, they'll swoop in with the perfect solution, working through the night to save the day while everyone else watches in grateful amazement. The psychological payoff for this behavior is enormous and multifaceted. First, they get to experience the intoxicating rush of being genuinely needed, of having their worst fears about invisibility and irrelevance completely disproven by desperate people begging for their help. Second, they receive intense gratitude and admiration from those they've rescued, feeding their deep hunger for recognition and validation. Third, they get to feel powerful and competent in a way that ordinary preventive problem solving could never provide. But the most addictive element is how this pattern makes them feel special and unique. Anyone can maintain systems and prevent problems, but only heroes can dramatically save the day when all hope seems lost. This creates a psychological dependency on crisis that extends far beyond professional environments into their personal relationships, family dynamics, and social circles. In romantic relationships, this manifests as unconsciously creating emotional distance or conflict precisely when things become too peaceful or stable. An Aries might start picking fights during happy periods, become mysteriously moody when their partner is feeling secure, or begin flirting with others just enough to create jealousy and insecurity. Then, when their partner becomes upset or threatens to leave, they transform into the most attentive, romantic, devoted partner imaginable, proving their love through grand gestures and passionate reconciliation. The cycle becomes so predictable that partners often find themselves walking on eggshells, unconsciously monitoring for signs that the next manufactured crisis is approaching. But here's what makes this particularly insidious. The Aries genuinely experiences each reconciliation as proof of their deep love and commitment. They're not aware they created the problem in the first place, so the resolution feels like a testament to their capacity for devotion, rather than evidence of their need for drama. Family relationships suffer under this dynamic in particularly painful ways. Aries might unconsciously escalate minor disagreements into major conflicts, allowing resentments to fester until family gatherings become battlegrounds, then positioning themselves as the peacemaker who brings everyone back together. They'll withhold emotional support when family members are struggling with manageable problems, waiting until those problems become crises before offering help, ensuring their intervention feels miraculous rather than routine. The most sophisticated version of this pattern involves creating artificial urgency around situations that could easily be handled with normal planning and communication. They might wait until the last possible moment to handle important responsibilities, ensuring that everyone else becomes anxious and stressed about potential consequences. Then they'll work frantically to meet the deadline, often succeeding through sheer determination and adrenaline, allowing others to witness their heroic efforts to save the day. What makes this behavior so difficult to recognize and address is how often it actually works. Aries frequently do save the day. Their last-minute interventions often are brilliant, and the gratitude they receive is genuine. This success reinforces the pattern while making it nearly impossible for others to criticize without seeming ungrateful. After all, how do you complain about someone who consistently rescues you from disaster, even if you suspect they might have prevented the disaster in the first place? The long-term consequences of this pattern are devastating for both the Aries and everyone around them. People learn they can't rely on Aries for steady, consistent support because help only arrives during crisis mode. This creates relationships based on emergency rather than partnership, where others feel grateful for rescue but never truly safe or supported. Meanwhile, the Aries becomes addicted to crisis-level intensity, finding normal life boring and unstimulating by comparison. Perhaps most tragically, this pattern prevents Aries from developing the patience and consistency required for genuine leadership. Real leadership involves preventing problems, maintaining systems, and supporting others' independent growth, rather than creating dependency through dramatic rescues. But because hero moments provide such intense psychological rewards, many Aries never develop these quieter but more sustainable leadership skills. The exhaustion from maintaining this pattern eventually catches up with them, living in constant preparation for the next crisis, monitoring everyone else's problems for intervention opportunities, and maintaining the energy required for dramatic rescues demands tremendous psychological resources. Over time, many Aries find themselves burned out from their own success, wondering why their helpful nature feels more like a burden than a gift, never realizing they've trapped themselves in a cycle of their own creation. The fourth reason, they're addicted to the chase, but terrified of commitment. This addiction operates on a neurochemical level that most Aries never fully understand, creating a destructive cycle where the very act of pursuing something generates more satisfaction than actually obtaining it. The hunt itself becomes the drug, flooding their system with dopamine, adrenaline, and the intoxicating sense of possibility that anything could happen. But the moment they achieve their goal, Whether it's landing the dream job, winning over the perfect partner, or reaching a long-sought milestone, something inside them fundamentally shifts and the magic dies. The psychological mechanism behind this pattern reveals itself most clearly in romantic relationships, where Aries often display legendary persistence during the pursuit phase. They'll move mountains to get someone's attention, plan elaborate gestures that would make Hollywood screenwriters jealous, and demonstrate levels of creativity and dedication that convince their targets they've found someone truly special. The intensity of their focus during this period feels almost supernatural. They seem to have unlimited energy, endless optimism, and an unshakable belief that this person represents everything they've ever wanted. But here's what the object of their affection doesn't realize. The Aries isn't actually falling in love with them as a person. They're falling in love with the challenge they represent, the fantasy of who they might become together, and most importantly, the feeling of being someone capable of winning something valuable, the actual human being with their real personality, genuine needs, and everyday quirks, remains largely invisible behind the projection screen of Aries' imagination. Once the chase succeeds and the relationship becomes official, reality begins to intrude in ways that feel almost violating to the Aries psyche. The person they fought so hard to win starts revealing human flaws, expressing actual needs, and expecting this kind of consistent emotional availability that requires genuine intimacy rather than performative passion. Suddenly, instead of being a prize to be won, this person becomes a responsibility to be managed, and the Aries finds themselves trapped in exactly the kind of ongoing commitment that their nervous system is designed to flee. The most heartbreaking aspect of this pattern is how it destroys perfectly good relationships that could have flourished with patience and maturity. Partners often report that their Aries seem to change overnight from an attentive, passionate pursuer into someone distant, critical, and perpetually dissatisfied. They'll start noticing flaws they never mentioned before, comparing their partner unfavorably to other people, or suddenly developing passionate interests that require time and attention previously devoted to the relationship. This same addiction manifests just as destructively in career and personal achievement contexts. Aries will throw themselves obsessively into pursuing promotions, business opportunities, or personal goals, displaying the kind of focused determination that makes others assume they'll be thrilled once they achieve what they're working toward. But success often triggers an unexpected depression or restlessness that catches everyone, including the Aries themselves, completely off guard. The promotion they fought for suddenly feels boring and routine. The business they built begins to feel like a prison of daily responsibilities. The personal achievement that once seemed so important now appears meaningless in the face of newer, more exciting possibilities. This isn't ingratitude or inability to appreciate their accomplishments. It's the inevitable crash that follows when someone addicted to the neurochemical high of pursuit suddenly finds themselves in the low stimulation environment of actually having what they wanted. Understanding the neurological basis of this addiction helps explain why willpower and good intentions prove so ineffective in breaking the cycle. During pursuit phases, Aries brains are flooded with chemicals designed to sustain intense focus and overcome obstacles. This creates a state of consciousness that feels more real and alive than normal existence, like they're finally becoming their truest selves. But achievement removes the obstacles that were generating this chemical cocktail, leaving them feeling flat, empty, and desperately seeking the next fix. The tragedy deepens when you consider how this pattern affects their self-perception and relationships with others. Friends and family watch Aries repeatedly abandon good situations just when things were going well, creating a reputation for being flaky, ungrateful, or impossible to satisfy. But the Aries experiences each abandonment as a necessary escape from suffocation, never recognizing that they're running from success itself rather than from specific circumstances or people. The fifth reason, they use anger as a shield to avoid deeper conversations. The sophistication of this emotional defense system rivals anything developed by professional therapists. except it's designed to prevent healing rather than promote it. Aries have discovered that explosive anger serves as the perfect conversation terminator, allowing them to avoid any discussion that might require vulnerability, self-examination, or acknowledgement of their emotional complexity. What appears to others as simple bad temper is actually a carefully calibrated psychological weapon designed to maintain emotional distance while making the other person feel responsible for the conflict. The timing of these explosive episodes reveals their true purpose. Notice how Aries rarely explode during casual conversations about surface-level topics. Their anger emerges precisely when discussions begin moving toward territory that threatens their emotional armor. Moments when partners want to talk about relationship problems, when friends express concern about their behavior patterns, when family members attempt to address long-standing issues, or when anyone suggests they might benefit from examining their choices more carefully. The explosion itself follows a predictable pattern that serves multiple psychological functions simultaneously. First, it immediately shifts the focus from whatever vulnerable topic was being discussed to the Aries' emotional state, effectively hijacking the entire conversation. Second, it makes the other person defensive about their approach rather than able to pursue their original concerns. Third, it creates such an uncomfortable atmosphere that most people will do anything to restore peace, including dropping whatever issue they were trying to address. But the most insidious aspect of this strategy is how it makes the Aries feel justified in their anger while simultaneously avoiding the very conversations that could help them grow. They genuinely experience these discussions as attacks on their character rather than attempts at deeper connection, so their explosive response feels like legitimate self-defense rather than emotional manipulation. This allows them to maintain their self-image as someone who simply refuses to tolerate disrespect, never recognizing that they're actually running from intimacy. The aftermath of these explosions creates additional barriers to genuine communication. Other people learn to edit themselves heavily around Aries, avoiding topics that might trigger another outburst. This protective editing creates exactly the kind of surface-level relationships that allow Aries to feel connected without ever being truly known. They can interpret this careful treatment as respect or admiration, never realizing that people are actually afraid of their emotional volatility. Over time, this pattern creates a peculiar form of isolation, where Aries remains surrounded by people who care about them but can never truly reach them. Friends and family develop a shared understanding that certain topics are off limits, certain questions should never be asked, and certain concerns must be handled with extraordinary delicacy, if at all. This creates relationships that feel safe to the Aries, but ultimately lack the depth and authenticity that could provide genuine emotional nourishment. The most devastating consequence of this pattern is how it prevents Aries from developing emotional intelligence and self-awareness. Every potential moment of growth gets aborted through explosive deflection, leaving them stuck in adolescent patterns of emotional regulation well into adulthood. They never learn how to sit with discomfort, how to examine their own motivations honestly, or how to navigate complex emotional terrain with maturity and grace. Perhaps most tragically, this defensive anger often drives away the very people who could provide the love and acceptance that Aries desperately crave. Partners who initially found their passion exciting eventually become exhausted by the emotional landmines scattered throughout every attempt at deeper intimacy. Friends who once appreciated their directness begin to feel like they're walking through a psychological minefield where one wrong word could trigger an explosion. The sixth reason: they secretly compare themselves to everyone and feel inadequate. Behind every display of Aries, confidence lies a mental scoreboard so detailed and comprehensive that it would exhaust a professional statistician. From the moment they wake up until they fall asleep, Aries are unconsciously measuring their achievements, appearance, relationships, possessions, and life progress against every single person they encounter. This isn't casual social comparison. It's an obsessive, relentless internal audit that never stops running in the background of their consciousness, creating a constant state of anxiety masked by aggressive bravado. The sophistication of this comparison system reveals itself in how specific and varied the metrics become. They're not just comparing obvious things like salary or relationship status. They're mentally cataloging who got promoted faster, whose children seem more successful, whose house is in a better neighborhood, whose social media posts get more engagement, whose workout routine appears more disciplined, whose vacation photos look more exotic, and whose life generally seems to flow with the kind of effortless success that always appears to elude them. What makes this pattern particularly torturous for Aries is their competitive nature ensures they are never satisfied with being average or even above average in any category. Being good at their job isn't enough if someone else is better. Having a happy relationship feels meaningless if another couple seems happier. Achieving personal goals loses significance if others achieve the same goals younger, faster, or with less effort. This creates an impossible standard where they can never truly celebrate their own accomplishments because there's always someone, somewhere, doing something more impressive. The emotional toll of maintaining this constant comparative analysis manifests in ways that often surprise people who see Aries as naturally confident. They'll experience sudden mood crashes after social gatherings where they observed others' successes. They'll become inexplicably irritated when friends share good news. They'll develop mysterious stress symptoms that seem disproportionate to their actual life circumstances. These reactions confuse both the Aries and those around them because the external triggers appear positive rather than threatening. Perhaps most heartbreaking is how this comparison trap distorts their perception of their own achievements. Accomplishments that should generate pride and satisfaction instead become evidence of inadequacy when measured against others' successes. Getting a promotion feels diminished if someone else got a bigger promotion. Completing a marathon becomes meaningless if others finished faster. Publishing a book loses significance if other authors are more successful. This creates a psychological prison where genuine satisfaction becomes impossible because the goalposts constantly shift based on others' performances. The most insidious aspect of this pattern is how it prevents Aries from developing authentic self-awareness and personal growth. Instead of focusing on their own journey, values, and unique strengths, they become completely externally referenced, deriving their sense of worth entirely from how they stack up against others. This external focus means they never develop a stable internal sense of value that could sustain them during inevitable periods of relative underperformance, or when life circumstances prevent them from competing at full capacity. Their aggressive competitiveness, which others often interpret as natural confidence, actually serves as a defense mechanism against the crushing anxiety of potentially falling behind. They pick fights not because they enjoy conflict, but because winning arguments provides temporary relief from the constant fear of being surpassed. They minimize others' achievements not out of meanness, but because acknowledging others' successes intensifies their own feelings of inadequacy. They rush to share their own accomplishments not from ego, but from desperate need for external validation to counter their internal scoreboard's negative feedback. Social media has turned this psychological tendency into a form of digital self-torture for many Aries. Platforms designed to showcase highlight reels become evidence repositories for everyone else's superior life choices. They find themselves compulsively scrolling through others' curated successes, each post adding another data point to their internal inadequacy file. The irony is devastating. The same platforms that allow them to broadcast their own achievements also provide endless ammunition for their comparative anxiety. The workplace becomes a particularly cruel battlefield for this dynamic. Aries often excel in competitive environments precisely because their comparison anxiety drives them to superhuman efforts. But this same anxiety prevents them from collaborating effectively, celebrating team successes, or maintaining the kind of professional relationships that could actually accelerate their career growth. They're so focused on outperforming everyone around them that they miss opportunities for mentorship, partnership, and mutual support that could benefit everyone involved. Romantic relationships suffer under the weight of this constant comparison as well. Aries partners often report feeling like they're being measured against ex-partners, celebrity couples, or other relationships that appear more successful or passionate. The Aries might unconsciously sabotage perfectly good relationships because their partner doesn't measure up to some impossible standard derived from their comparative analysis of others' romantic success. They might also become controlling or demanding, trying to shape their relationships to look more impressive from the outside rather than focusing on genuine compatibility and emotional connection. The most tragic consequence of this comparison addiction is how it steals their capacity for joy and gratitude. Moments that should be celebrations become anxiety-provoking reminders of how much further they still need to go. Achievements that require genuine effort and growth feel hollow because someone else's achievements seem more impressive. Relationships that provide real love and support feel insufficient because other relationships appear more exciting or successful from external observation. Over time, this pattern creates a peculiar form of depression that looks like success from the outside. Aries might achieve significant goals, accumulate impressive accomplishments, and appear to be living enviable lives while internally feeling like failures who can never measure up to the standards they see others effortlessly meeting. This disconnect between external success and internal satisfaction creates a special kind of suffering. They can't even admit to feeling inadequate because their lives look so successful to outside observers. Breaking free from this comparison prison requires recognizing that the scoreboard itself is the problem, not their position on it. But for Aries, abandoning the comparative mindset feels like giving up their competitive edge, surrendering their drive for excellence, or accepting mediocrity. They don't realize that true confidence comes from internal alignment rather than external ranking, that genuine success means living according to personal values rather than societal metrics, and that lasting satisfaction emerges from gratitude for their unique journey rather than victory over others. The most profound tragedy is that this comparison addiction prevents them from recognizing and appreciating their genuine strengths and contributions. While they're busy measuring themselves against others, they miss the unique value they bring to relationships, workplaces, and communities. Their natural leadership abilities, infectious enthusiasm, and capacity for inspiring others remain undervalued because they're too focused on areas where others excel to notice their own distinctive gifts. Understanding this hidden struggle helps explain why Aries can simultaneously appear so confident and act so defensively, why they can achieve so much yet seem perpetually dissatisfied, and why they can inspire others while remaining unable to appreciate their own accomplishments. The armor of aggressive confidence protects a heart that feels perpetually behind in the race of life, desperately seeking evidence that they matter in a world where everyone else appears to be winning more easily than they are. What we've uncovered today reveals why Aries can be simultaneously the most inspiring and most emotionally exhausting people in your life. These 6 dark truths aren't character flaws or moral failings. They're sophisticated psychological survival mechanisms developed over years of trying to protect themselves from their deepest fears, while maintaining the warrior image the world expects from them. Their terror of appearing vulnerable drives them to abandon projects and relationships right when persistence could lead to genuine growth. They've learned to manufacture drama just to experience the intoxicating rush of being the hero, never realizing they're creating the very problems they then solve. Their addiction to conquest keeps them running from commitment, always seeking the next adrenaline fix, rather than building something lasting. When conversations threaten to expose their emotional complexity, they weaponize anger to shut down intimacy before it can develop. And beneath all this performance lies the most heartbreaking truth of all, a constant comparison system that ensures they never feel adequate no matter what they achieve. Understanding these patterns doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but it does explain the psychology behind those confusing Aries actions you've witnessed. The friend who seems confident but explodes when you try to have deeper conversations. The partner who pursued you intensely, then became distant once you committed. The colleague who creates problems just to solve them dramatically. the family member whose achievements never seem to satisfy them. Now you know what's really driving these behaviors. For the Aries watching this, recognition is the first step toward freedom. These patterns develop to protect you, but they're now preventing you from experiencing the genuine connection, lasting success, and inner peace you actually crave. Your warrior nature doesn't have to mean living in constant battle mode. True strength sometimes means staying present during difficult emotions rather than fleeing into anger or abandonment. Real leadership involves building sustainable systems rather than creating hero moments. Authentic confidence comes from self-acceptance rather than external validation. The most powerful realization is that you don't have to choose between being strong and being human. Vulnerability isn't weakness. It's the courage to be seen authentically. Commitment isn't prison. It's the foundation for building something meaningful. Emotional depth isn't dangerous. It's what allows real intimacy to develop. The very things you've been running from are actually the keys to the fulfillment you've been seeking. This journey of self-discovery requires courage, patience, and often support from others who understand the complexity of breaking lifelong patterns. But the reward is finally being able to remove the armor that's been both protecting and imprisoning you, allowing people to love the real you rather than the performance you've been maintaining. If this video helped you understand yourself or someone you love better, please subscribe to Secret of the Zodiac and hit that notification bell so you never miss our deep dives into the hidden psychology of every sign. We're building a community of people committed to understanding the real motivations behind astrological behaviors, rather than just surface-level descriptions. Take a moment to explore our other videos, where we uncover similar hidden truths about every zodiac sign. You'll be amazed at how much sense your relationships start to make when you understand what's really driving everyone's behavior beneath the surface. But here's where I need your help. Creating these detailed psychological analyses requires extensive research, script development, and production time. If this content has provided value in your life or relationships, please consider supporting our work through Super Thanks donations. These contributions directly fund our ability to bring you daily content that goes beyond basic horoscopes into the real psychology that shapes how each sign moves through the world. Even small donations help cover research materials, production costs, and the time needed to create these in-depth explorations. Your support makes it possible for us to continue this important work of helping people understand themselves and others more deeply. Most importantly, I want to hear from you in the comments. If you're an Aries, which of these truths resonated most strongly, and what patterns are you ready to change? If you know an Aries, tell us which behaviors you've observed and how this new understanding might transform your relationship with them. Share your stories about the Aries people in your life, their struggles with vulnerability, their abandonment patterns, their need to be the hero. Your experiences help create a richer understanding for everyone in this community. Don't just watch and leave. Your perspective matters, and your story could be exactly what someone else needs to hear to feel less alone in their struggles.